Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where it's Wednesday. That means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I'll talk about a certain comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue on his channel will talk about the same comic book, graphic novel, or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team-up that we do once a week. And this week, Roger and I are here at the Manor with a really interesting book. This is the greatest Batman stories ever told. You see, a few weeks ago, we did a video on the greatest Superman stories ever told, which was an anthology that was put together in 1987. And that book had a big part in me being the Superman fan that I am today, because I picked that up way back then. It was the first time I had read a lot of those stories and stories from those times. I'd never read a single, I don't think, Silver Age Superman story until I picked up that collection. So that collection is awesome. And so I thought this week we would do the greatest Batman stories ever told, which came out in 1988. So this was the follow-up to the Superman volume. And this came out a year before the Batman movie was released. So there was a lot of interest in Batman at the time. In 1988, yeah, leading into the Batman movie, that was a time of great interest in Batman. And then 89 happened, and it was like the year of Batman. So this was well-timed, this book. One thing I noticed right away about this book, and I should mention, is that I think it's less successful in some ways than the Superman volume was. For one thing, they kind of took the greatest Batman stories ever told and split it up into two volumes. This one and another volume called The Greatest Joker Stories Ever Told, which I have around here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, but somewhere in the Manor I do have that book. And that's problematic because, you know, you're not going to know that when you just buy this. You don't know you're going to have to buy another book to really get all of the greatest Batman stories ever. And so you have a volume of the greatest Batman stories ever told with no Joker in it. I mean, Joker does make an appearance where he teams up with the Penguin. But that's the only place the Joker is in this book. And yeah, that just doesn't seem right. If you have a volume called this, it should be that. They should have taken a couple great Joker stories. There are a couple great ones. Stick them in the book, and there you go. Then you actually have what this volume says it is. But obviously, DC Comics could make more money the other way. Because, of course, the Joker was the lead villain of that 1989 Batman movie, and everybody knew it was going to be the Joker. And the Joker always has been a very popular villain, so it's not surprising they did that. It's just, I don't know, I think it's kind of lame. This cover is good, though. Was it Walt Simonson that did that? Yeah, Walt Simonson did that cover, and he did an excellent job on it. So let's take a look at the actual contents of this volume. So we already know that there's one strike against this book in that it doesn't have Joker stories in it. But there are a lot of really cool things in this book. Dick Giordano does the introduction. Artist and inker and editor Dick Giordano. And he does a pretty good introduction. It goes on for a few pages. And then Mike Gold does an introduction here, where he talks about how they nominated the stories for this volume. And then we get into the stories. And so, of course, we start off in the Golden Age with a very, very early Batman story where Batman fights the evil monk. And this story is really cool because we have vampires, we have werewolves, all kinds of creepy stuff. We also have the introduction of the Batarang. That's the first Batarang. That's actually the first bat plane. And so there's some firsts in this issue. this was back when Batman had a fiancée. He had a fiancée. She was only temporary. Batman can't get married. He should have known that right away. Anyway, Batman has to go to Transylvania, of course, because, you know, vampires. Gets himself stuck in a very early Batman trap. Gets himself out of the trap. It's an excellent adventure. I liked it a lot. Now, who wrote this? Is this Gardner Fox? Let me see. Yeah, Gardner Fox wrote the story. That's why it's so weird. And it's a two-part story. It's a two-part Batman story. So it's extra cool in all sorts of ways. We get a stiff Batwing cape. And it was really cool. So that's that story. And in the next story, Batman has to fight a bunch of people that have been turned into giants against their will. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering right, it was against their will. I think they were like lunatics from an asylum or something, and they were turned into giants. So Batman had to fight and ruthlessly slaughter these giants. You see, Golden Age Batman, he didn't mess around. So the giants, you know, they would just go into town and wreck things, mess things up. And Batman is captured. He's actually stuck with and infected with the giant serum right there. And so after he fights all the giants, he has to come up with an antidote to that. But he's very ruthless with the giants. First of all, this was back when he had a machine gun on the Batplane, which, you know, you just don't have a machine gun on the Batplane anymore. Machine gun on the Batplane. Then he used his bat rope to literally strangle one of the giants here. You know, times have changed. Times have changed, fortunately. Not so much strangling going on anymore. Then we have that story with the Joker and the Penguin, when the Joker and the Penguin team up. Now, I have to say, Knights of Knavery, that's the story. It is a pretty darn good story, I'd have to say. I love this version of the Batmobile right there. That is still one of my favorite Batmobiles. If not, it might be my favorite Batmobile. It's just really cool. So, Batman and Robin, they defeat them. Then we have a very interesting Penguin story, which is from the newspaper. So we get some of the newspaper strips reprinted here, and that's kind of a cool Penguin story. That was awesome. Then we get the origin of the Batman. So up to this point, the Batman's origin in the comic books had only been told in a 2-page story, I believe. I think this was the first time that his full origin was told. And it's excellent. The artwork in this is actually by Bob Kane. So the Bob Kane is not actually my favorite Batman artist. I think Dick Sprang is still my favorite Batman artist. But Batman actually runs into the man who killed his parents. He recognizes him. We get the flashback from when he was a child and his parents were killed. And so Batman tells the story of how he transformed himself through training and education and all the other stuff Batman had to do to become Batman. Again, it doesn't take too long to tell that story. You just get a few panels that pretty much show you everything that you need to know about how Batman became Batman. But then he faces the man who killed his parents at the end, and he actually unmasks. He unmasks before Joe Chill, the man who killed his parents. And Joe Chill freaks out, and he runs away. He gets away from the Batman, and then he blurts out to these bad guys, "Hey, Batman's after me. I killed his parents, so now he wants revenge. I'm the reason that he's even Batman." Which doesn't seem a very bright thing to say, because then everybody's like, you were responsible for Batman, and they murder him promptly. So, you know, Batman doesn't have to kill him himself. The criminals do. Which is good, because at this point, Batman has taken the machine gun off the Batplane and is no longer murdering people. Hey, speaking of Batplanes, here's the birth of the Batplane 2. But, you know, Batman has to upgrade his stuff. Now, this is cool because this story is by my favorite Batman artist of all time, Dick Sprang. He just is a fantastic artist, and his work is just amazing. He designed the new Batplane. He's had a bunch since then. But, you know, it's really cool, and it's a really good story. Is it one of the best Batman stories of all time? I don't know. Probably not. Then we have a very strange Robin story that shows up in here. So it's not even a Batman story. It's just about Robin, where Robin is invited to tell one of his exploits to a group of police officers, you know, to educate them on how they should be doing their jobs. So yeah, so this teenage boy is telling the officers, the police officers, the grown-up police officers who have gone through actual police officer training, he's telling them how they should do their jobs right here in this story. So this is a story from the 50s, and at this point, Batman and Robin are no longer vigilantes hunted by the police, as they were in the beginning of their career. Now they're actually deputized by the police as officers of the law, because we can't have Batman breaking the law. So yes, a teenage boy was deputized, if he's even that at this point. He could be like 12 here. He's a deputized officer of the law. Of course, Batman and Robin don't have to follow any of those pesky rules that police officers do. They don't need warrants like ever. They don't need to call dispatch to let dispatch know what's going on or where they are or what they're doing. They don't have to do anything. They could just, you know, bust into places and, you know, get in trouble. So obviously the officers do have to follow a bunch of those rules. So why is this kid even there? I don't know. But then not one of the greatest Batman stories ever told. But then we go to the Jungle Cat Queen, which is a completely awesome Catwoman story, which totally makes up for the last story. Again, we have art by Dick Sprang, and it's just amazing. She has her own cat plane, which catches the bat plane. Gotta watch out for the cat plane. And then she's in the jungle, you know, with the jungle animals. Batman and Robin have to take off their outfits because they're being hunted, so they have to dress like cavemen for some reason. I don't know why, but you know, it all makes sense in the story. Now we get some of those great Dick Sprang backgrounds. Dick Sprang is just so great about setting the scene, giving stylish backgrounds, designing cool things like this cat temple there. He's excellent at designing an artistic page. Dick Sprang, man, he puts it all together. So that was awesome. That was a great story. Then we have the story of the first Batman. It turns out Batman's father was at a party. Batman. He came up with a Batman costume before the real Batman ever did. And young Bruce Wayne saw that and remembered it. And that's how he came up with his own Batman outfit. Little retcons like this happened all the time. This art is by Sheldon Moldoff, who I never used to like when I was younger and would see old reprints of Batman. But now I appreciate him. I'm reading the Silver Age Batman Omnibus right now, and I'm really enjoying his stuff. Then we have Superman and Batman in a World's Finest Story, the origin of the Superman-Batman team. So Superman and Batman had actually met before this on a boat, on a ship actually, but this recounts the story where they actually became partners. They decided to become partners to fight crime, and that is recounted in this story. It's awesome. All those old World's Finest stories are completely great. And then we move on to something very peculiar. Again, a Sheldon Moldoff 1950s Batman story. Robin dies at dawn, which seems to happen on another world. In the 1950s, Batman had some interesting adventures, including this one, where he has some sort of psychedelic trip that seems to take place on another world. Is this one of the greatest Batman stories of all time? I don't know, but it's pretty cool. I like it. Then, after Robin dies at dawn, he doesn't actually... I shouldn't give away spoilers. He doesn't die. He doesn't die at dawn. Damn it, I'm always giving things away. Then we have this story, The Blockbuster Invasion of Gotham City. This art is by Carmine Infantino, the famous Flash artist. Don't think he's as good on Batman as he is on the Flash, but still, he's decent. He's a decent Batman artist for this particular time, which was the 1960s. So we get a cool 1960s Batman story. Then we move on to something really cool. So then we have a Neal Adams story where Neal Adams sort of meets Enemy Ace. And he has an adventure in the sky. Bruce Wayne is producing a movie about Enemy Ace. And there's criminal shenanigans going on and Batman gets involved. The story is okay. The artwork is fantastic. Neal Adams, everything you've heard about Neal Adams and his time on Batman, it was all correct. Neal Adams is fantastic. I mean, just look at that. I mean, he's just great. And so his time on Batman was fantastic. And then we get another Neal Adams story right after this one, right after that one. And this is a Two-Face story. So we are getting one of Batman's most fantastic villains, Two-Face. And there he is. Look at that. That's fantastic. Great stuff. It's been a while, I think, since DC has reprinted Neal Adams' Batman. I think a lot of those books are out of print now, so they're about due to reprint that stuff. They had an omnibus or something like that for a while. I wish I'd gotten my hands on that. This does have the most boring Batmobile in the world, though. It's just like an ordinary sedan with like a bat head on it. It's very dull. That was a dull Batmobile. Then we have a Man-Bat story where the story and art are both by Frank Robbins. Frank Robbins doesn't seem to be anybody's favorite comic book artist of anything, but I've always kind of liked Frank Robbins. He had a throwback, old school style. Very cartoony and strange. I liked the story. Odd that they included it instead of the Neal Adams Man-Bat story, which was the best Man-Bat story. Or it was certainly better than this one, but I guess they figured we already have two Neal Adams stories in here. We can't have another one. They should have had the Neal Adams Joker story in there, but no, that's in the other Joker volume. Then we have Bruce Wayne taking a bunch of kids out into the woods to go camping, and they all tell their own versions of what Batman is like. And at the end, Bruce Wayne decides to dress up as Batman and see if he can scare the kids, because, you know, to heck with my secret identity, I'll just, you know, completely mess that up for, you know, this story. But it doesn't work. They all think he's an idiot, and he kind of is in this story. Then we have Jim Aparo in this story, Death Mask. Jim Aparo is a great Batman artist. He's really cool. He's one of my favorite Batman artists. He also had a long run on Aquaman, which is very well thought of. Is this one of the greatest Batman stories ever told? I don't know. It's pretty good, though. It's pretty good. I have to give it that. Then we have a story where the artwork is by Alex Toth, and the writer is Archie Goodwin. And I don't know that Alex Toth did any other Batman stories other than this one. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably why this one is included, just because Toth did the artwork. And it is pretty cool. The story itself is okay. It's probably nothing to write home about. I think this story made it in because of the artwork. Then we have a celebrated story where the art is by Dick Giordano, story by Denny O'Neil, There Is No Hope in Crime Alley, which recounts how Batman every year will go back to Crime Alley where his parents were murdered and fight crime there. Now, at this point in Batman's career, he was fighting international criminals. He was going all over the place. You know, he was big time. And he didn't spend as much time fighting street-level crime as he would in the latter half of the 1980s. This story, I believe, was probably either from the early 80s or the late 1970s. Maybe I could find out. Let me just look this up. 1976. So at this point, he's not fighting as much street-level crime. He's too busy fighting, you know, like I said, international crooks and big-time supervillains. But once a year, he'll go to Crime Alley and just fight crime there. You know, just on account of his parents getting killed there. Like I said, in the later 80s, he was fighting street-level crime like always, in between all of his other crime fighting. Then we have a Denny O'Neil story that is a text story, and it's stylish. It's okay. It's okay. Again, I think the reason it's in it is because it's just an unusual text story with art by, I didn't see who did the art. Is it Robbins? Maybe. I don't know. I couldn't see. I don't have my glasses on. Give me a break. Oh, and then we have the Deadshot Ricochet. We have a Deadshot story in here. Steve Englehart's story. Terry Austin is on the art in this one. This is an excellent story. I have to say, the artwork is fantastic on this story. And in this one, we have Deadshot, who became so popular on the Suicide Squad. Here, he is just a Batman villain. He's just a Batman villain. And, you know, they're fighting on top of a giant typewriter because that's just the kind of thing that used to happen in Batman stories. Batman stories, I don't know that they have as much or as many giant things as they used to. They used to fight on top of giant things all the time. Giant typewriters, giant whatever. Then we have a Calendar Man story, and I can only figure that this is in here because Walt Simonson did the art. As a story, it's okay, it's entertaining, but I think it must be Walt Simonson being on the art, and that's why this story is in here. It's pretty cool. Calendar Man, he dresses up in a different outfit every time he goes out because he's very fashionable and, you know, all based on the calendar. It's a typical Batman thing. It's an okay story. Greatest Batman story? No, probably not. Then we have To Kill a Legend, where Batman has a chance to go into an alternate reality and prevent the death of another Bruce Wayne's parents. Robin is a little worried, though, because he doesn't know what's going to happen to the world if a young Bruce Wayne doesn't become Batman in this other reality. But of course, they have to save Bruce Wayne's parents if they can, you know, stop people from getting killed. But as it turns out, this Bruce Wayne in the other reality becomes Batman anyway. Go figure. So there was that. And then we have the autobiography of Bruce Wayne, which is a story which happens on another Earth. This is the Golden Age Batman. And the Golden Age Batman is having adventures, and he's fighting the Scarecrow, and he ends up... actually, this has to be Silver Age, because we got Batwoman in here. So, Silver Age Batman. And he ends up falling in love with Catwoman, as he always was anyway, and they end up getting married, right? Yeah. They get married. And that's it. That's the end of the volume. So this is full of good Batman stories. I don't think any of these stories, with the possible exception of the Robin story, and even that wasn't terrible, this is full of good Batman stories. And there are some really good Batman stories in here. I haven't read enough Batman in my life, because I've always been more of a Superman fan, to be a great judge of the greatest Batman stories of all time, particularly when it was cut off at 1988. But it seems to me there were probably better stories out there than a lot of the stories in this. But it's still an excellent volume, and one you can still find, you know, floating around out there. There have been a bunch of other volumes like this since. As I showed in my Superman video, same thing with Batman. Every few years, there's a new best of Batman volume. And there surely will be another one soon for his 85th anniversary. So, yeah, we always get the best of Batman stories. But this one was an early version, and it does have some excellent Batman stories. I really enjoyed it. I'll shut up now. I've been going on long enough. I will catch you next time.